loneliness. Getting anything? Yes, sir? Before we can talk about relationships, or how we connect to other people and why, let's talk about loneliness. But we can't really talk about loneliness itself. You have to talk about what it means to be human. And I'm going to go back in history, and I think for the most part he's right. His name is Sigmund Freud. And there are lots of other people throughout history. Socrates is another, the Buddha is another, Rumi is another. And they all say the same thing in a different way. There is something about us that longs for something. I mean, you may be as powerful as Donald Trump. You may have the best looking women around you. You may have the best kids around you. But something about you still hungers for something. You don't know what it is. You have a boyfriend, you have a girlfriend, and yet you're attracted to something out there. Kind of like the salmon fish. You have everything, but there comes a point where you say, I just want to go home. What is home? I don't really know. And so throughout history, this idea of having the kingdom of God inside you, this idea of having an id inside you. You know, you have the ego, you have the superego, and you have the id. And then there is this unconscious part of you. And you want to figure out what it is. You want to go to the therapist office and say, I am good for about 20 hours a day. And then when the 21st hour comes in, all of a sudden I explode. And I don't really know why. Can you give me access? Can you tell me where that door is where I can knock on it, open it, and see who I am in that particular space? And you say, well, I don't really know who that is. I don't know where that frustration comes about. And so what happens is, depending, of course, on your personality type, your orientation, your temperament, your history, the first thing you need to understand is human beings at our very, very, very core. There is this thing that we have, and I don't know what it is. And again, you can call it by all sorts of names. It seems to me as if whatever lives inside us, at times it feels incomplete. At times it feels that whatever it has, it's just not enough. You want something more. Okay? People like the Buddha or Socrates or Jesus Christ, they call it the spiritual aspect of us. You want to believe that, fine. You don't want to believe it, fine. It doesn't really matter what you want to label it or give it the title to. But what remains true is that there is a part to us that is mysterious. You can be in the best of relationships. You wake up in the morning and you say, I hate my life. Now, God forbid if you say that out loud and it reaches the ears of your kids or reaches the ears of your husband or your wife or your parents. And they say, we have given you everything. You have your health, you have your health care, you have a job, you have money, you have everything. Why are you being ungrateful? And you say, I don't really know. I mean, people try to make you feel bad for feeling this way. But there is, again, when this mood comes about, you feel profoundly isolated. You go inward and you have no idea why. So there is a part to us that when it comes out, explodes, blossoms, you have no choice but to be pushed back into yourself and realize for the first time perhaps, you're really, really alone, despite having a lot of people in your life, and you love all these people and they love you back. That's the first thing. You know, my dream has always been to while I'm in the classroom talking, hopefully having a relatively good conversation, just drop and die. That'd be the best death for me. Um, to be retired on a wheelchair or a cane, stuck to machines or tubes, or not being able to walk, that's not a good way to go. Okay. That's the organic type of loneliness that sometimes just comes up and says, you're very privileged, but there are these moments that are going to come your way and you're going to feel alone. There is another kind of loneliness which has to do with you walk into a certain relationship with anything, doesn't matter. Maybe you buy a car, maybe you get into like a romantic relationship. And in whatever relationship you fall into, it generates a good amount of hopes and desires and dreams about you. I mean, that's what relationships do, And in some ways, you could even be unaware of it in the sense that you come to class and you say, I'm just going to go there so he can see my face. I'm not going to pay attention. I can't because he's so goddamn boring. And he says things that just make no sense to me. I don't really care for the things he say. I mean, that's what you come to class with, a good amount of hopes and dreams that you're going to come, I'm going to see your face, and you'll remain invisible. And then I begin to harass you. And little by little, your visibility shows itself. And now you become frustrated, and your dreams kind of get crushed. You wanted to remain invisible, now you are visible. Now everybody looks at you, and now you begin to sweat. And now, as you're beginning to talk, your words come out incoherently. And then you have 15 people in the class looking at you, judging you. You have you judging you. You have the instructor judging you. Then you have you judge everybody in the class. You also judge the culprit, which is me. And all of a sudden you say, oh my God, I have to deal with myself. 15 people, their judgments, my judgment on them, the stupid instructor who put them in the situation. And all of a sudden you're going to feel helpless. Now, sometimes in relationships, things happen where you feel broken, you feel abandoned, you feel betrayed. That's a different kind of loneliness. This is a loneliness that is manufactured by life itself. The first kind of loneliness is manufactured by your own organism. There are things inside you that come out and say, why the hell is this happening to me? I mean, go back, this is before Freud, before capitalism, before people dating casually, before sex being looked upon casually, before internet. Go back to the life story of Gilgamesh. And it's such an amazing epic, amazing story. It's about maybe almost 10,000 years old. You have a guy like us, has power, he's a CEO of Uruk, present-day Iraq. He pushes people around. He's immensely lonely, though. He doesn't know why. He wants people to love him. He doesn't know why, even though he's made from the stuff of the gods, even though people respect him, love him, it's just not enough for him. He falls in love. Then the person he loves, Enkidu, he dies. And then he says, I want to touch something that's immortal. I don't want life to take the things I love away from me. I don't want to love a human being and that person dying and then me feeling abandoned. I want to have a love that is homegrown, that lives inside me, that nothing can touch, nothing can take, nothing can destroy. I want it to be mine and only mine. We are condemned. So when you're talking about, let's say, me getting married, my wife leaving me, and then I say, I feel so lonely, how can I get into a relationship? I am in such a miserable situation. That particular brokenness or feeling of isolation and loneliness is immensely complicated for a couple of reasons. First, our organism doesn't do well being alone. I mean, we are, first of all, very, very weak animals. We need other people. We need other people to make our life go forward. And when you need other people to make your life go forward, it means that there is a portion of your life over which you have no power, over which you have no control, which means other people have control over your life. You want to cook something, well, you have to go to Safeway. And you have to ask the clerk. Imagine if they are unhelpful. Where are you going to find the stuff you're looking for? Or imagine you go to the checkout stand and you want to pay for the stuff and leave. And whoever the clerk is going to be, they're going to say some nasty things to you. They're going to ruin your mood. You're going to go home and you're going to realize, I don't want to cook at all. I'm just going to go in and out. I'm in a lousy mood. In Buddhism, they have this chart. It's made of 12 houses, and it describes how we have no choice but to be connected to our environment. Life puts pressure on you. If you've ever taken a chemistry class, your instructor gives you a tube, then tells you put some liquid in this tube, and you do, and he says then, okay, put some flame, generate some heat, okay, and impose that heat onto this tube. And all of a sudden the liquid inside the tube begins to bubble up and it gets foamed up, and then something happens. And all of a sudden you realize you really begin to understand the nature of things when you put pressure on it. Under ordinary circumstances, all of us are saints. Add some pressure and then you'll see how we're made. Life. You don't have to be in love with life. You can have a very casual relationship. Life puts pressure on you. There comes a point where you need to gossip. You need to call your friend and say, let me tell you what happened to me today. You need to express it. It really is kind of like gas in your stomach and your system. You either fart it, you do something with it, or you burp it. And life forces very much, it's like gas. It's gas for the psyche, gas for the emotions. You need other people to gossip. You need a pen and paper to write things down. We have no choice but to be dependent on other things. And the moment they come to you and say, no, I don't want to listen to your gossip. Well, since really, I have nobody to talk to. I have nobody to share myself with. It even gets more complicated because your physical body, your skin demands touch. You need to be touched. You need to be caressed. You need to be held. You need to be hugged. I mean, you are a victim to your own organism. It demands things from you. And then you say, I want to go somewhere. I am tired of just having sex with no meaning. I don't want things to be casual anymore. I want to go out with someone, like them, enjoy the conversation, take them home. Be okay with them laying in the bed next to me. Wake up, have breakfast. I mean, this is what your organism just demands. You're not a monk living in a cave on a certain mountaintop. We are regular, normal human beings. Ideas of Eckhart Tolle, Sadhguru, Jordan Peterson, Jesus Christ, they're no good for us. Accept yourself as very ordinary, a commoner. And so all of a sudden, your own body says, go out there, man, find someone. The problem now is this. If you're intellectually immature, almost anything that walks, what looks good, it's not going to be difficult. Walk around the lake, there's a guy running, muscular, and we have this dance and this idea of sexual harassment that's taking place these days. It's just ruining everything. I mean, as human beings, the only way you can actually create a relationship, you start with this dance called being flirtatious. A smile here, a smile there. You know, I flirt a little with you, you flirt a little with me, and then I say, would you like to have a cup of coffee? I can't just come out and say, would you like to have a cup of coffee to a complete stranger? No, I need to first harass you in a nice, decent way. When the culture removes that dance, well, what do you have? You have isolated people just walking around completely alone. There is a couple of verses by Omar Khayyam. I won't tell you the Persian, I'll just tell you the English. There was this man who was an artist. He would go to these art shops and buy himself wet clays, come home, shape them in the form of a jug or a cup, cook them or bake them, and then paint them, and then sell them. And then one day he goes to this pottery barn, and as he's walking to see which of the pots are his, one of them speaks out. This pot looks at the maker and says, you know, clay comes from the earth. The earth was once alive with human beings. The human being died. Eventually their body decomposed. They became part of the earth. You took me and you made me into a pot. I wonder whose hands you're going to fall into and how you're going to be made. Are you going to be made a cup, a pot, a stick, or are you just going to be scattered in the wind without ever having become anything? Reflection makes us alone. Pain makes us alone. And in aloneness, you just want someone to be next to you, to feel your grief, to feel your story. The great Greek poet Pindar once remarked that if it wasn't for old age, nobody would ever marry. Which is an interesting thing. Today, when you ask people, why do you want to get married? They say, oh, I'm in love. A couple thousand years ago, when you ask people, why do you want to get married? I just don't want to get sick. I don't want to die alone. So if you compare our definition of marriage, relationships, to loneliness, the way it is today versus a couple thousand years ago, it's apples and oranges, you know. The more you reflect, the more lonely you are. But because you need companionship, here's the trick. When you are with your friends and your companion, pretend well. Don't ever give them a window through which he or she can look and see that you've always been alone and you're always alone in the relationship. Never do that. Always pretend that you love them, that you care for them, that you depend on them, even though you know that you are far too close to your own loneliness. And you also are aware that no one can remove this loneliness from you. You're always going to be lonely. But once in a while, you enjoy having food with someone. You enjoy watching a movie with someone. You enjoy being intimate with someone. And if you're in the business of reflection, even when you are in bed having intimacy, you can't escape being condemned by your own reflection. Once in a while having sex, something about you is going to jump out and you're going to look at yourself and you say, what are you doing? This is disgusting. It's fun, but it's really disgusting. Who the hell is this man or this woman? And you say, okay, I'm going to do A, B, C, D for 5, 6 hours, up, down, up, down, up, down, and then I'll get to the climax, and then I'll do what I need to do. Then I say, shit, really? I wasted 5 hours of my life for this nonsense? And so very much like suffering, loneliness is something you can never get rid of. But it's also a modern problem. At least it has come to be a profoundly significant modern dilemma. Uh, for him, her, and myself, and maybe some of you in this classroom, if you have grandparents, go ask them how they met. Go ask them about their life, the town in which they lived. It wasn't like us today. Their towns were very, very small. Everybody knew everybody. I remember I had a colleague, David Long. I was first a student of his at Sacramento State University. And we became good friends for about 20 years. And then he died. But one day, he calls me and says, we didn't have cell phones or text then. He says, why don't you come to Georgetown? It's about maybe an hour away from Roseville. I go to his town, and I was surprised, somewhat shocked to see on the billboard where it says, population 395. I look again, I say, well, where are the zeros? It was only 395 people. One Chinese restaurant, one supermarket, one gas station, one mechanic shop. That's it. And one school. Everybody knew everybody. Now, when everybody knows everybody, you have very powerful elements of shame, self-respect. You have to talk a certain way. You have to behave a certain way because everybody knows you. Your name is important. If you lose your name in that town, you lose every value that your family has. No one's going to talk to you. No one wants to hang out with you. Now, it didn't take very long for someone like Jean-Jacques Rousseau, the French philosopher, and it wasn't even the 20th century, I think 18th or 17th century, he comes out and says, we have created an environment where, you live. I mean, look at this. We've been here for about 10 weeks. Nobody knows anybody. Nobody cares to know anybody. Lonely in a crowd. How could you sit in this room for 16 weeks, twice a week, for almost an hour and a half, not know anybody's name, not know their story? Maybe someone is homeless. Maybe someone doesn't have money to eat. Maybe someone is just dying. Maybe someone is immensely lonely. They just want to gossip for half hour. And yet nobody cares. And to care means to be interested. You have to give your time, and nobody wants to do that. And so despite the fact that people want to be in a relationship, we're no longer wired to be communal. One of the things that are recently happening is that men's sperm counts, they're decreasing. Nobody's having sex. I'm not saying nobody, but relationships take time. You have to be creative. You have to build faith and trust. You have to create emotions. That takes time. But when you have been sitting in your room from the age 3 and you've been playing video games, you don't even think about nasty images. Add to it the fact that when you get hooked to pornography, you don't even know how to treat women the right way. I don't know how the impact is on women. And so what you have is, despite the fact that people want to be in relationships, the culture won't let you. There's just too many garbage, trash things out there. It just contaminates your psyche. And I know that we've talked about this before, but again, the more mature you are, the more difficult it's going to be. Ms. Charlotte, Kevin, and myself, we are very, 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 very lucky people. And forgive me for saying this, but we are close. We are very close to the sunset. In a few years' time, we'll be dead. We've lived our life. We've paid our dues to some extent. You guys, you're like in your, what, 20s, early 30s? Man, you got another 60 years to go, and the way things are going, there's no hope. Now, if your question is, let's say it's my question, I was married, my wife left me after like 20 years, I'm devastated. Despite not wanting to be with anyone, seeing anyone, I want to go out there and just find some friendship out there. You're going to be haunted by the experience of your wife leaving you, that you built a relationship for 20 years and it turned out to be nothing. You have lost so much of confidence, of dreams, of hopes, that when you go out with someone, you say, why? And by the time you get to the dating scene, your organism has adjusted to being alone. Once in a while, you feel the pangs of being alone. So you say, maybe I should go on the dating app and see who's out there. Then you go out there and you realize people don't really know how to talk. They don't really know how to behave. Then you say, no, I'll just go out for the free dinners, but I'm not going to bring anyone home. There is, we talked about Sufism in the last class, which is a branch of Islam. Khalwat dar anjuman. Khalwat means solitude. Anjuman means crowd. And it's complicated because you could be alone, but you're going to be harassed by your thoughts, by your emotions. Or you're going to be harassed by the physical environment, lots of people around you. Khalwat dar anjuman means the following. Always remember that no one but you can nourish yourself. No one can ever nourish the most important parts of you. Have a husband, have a wife, love them, be devoted to them, 110%. But have the awareness, you're going to have these moments where you're going to look yourself in the mirror and say, I feel so alone. Okay. So, which means that you will be fully attached to your husband, you will also walk into that relationship with a good amount of detachment. It doesn't mean that if he or she leaves you, you won't be devastated. You will. But you always knew that the most important parts of you, they live in solitude. Always. The other aspect of Khalwat dar anjuman means you're going to relate or create an identity by the emotions you have. You're going to say, I am who I am because of my history. I am who I am because of my skin color. I am who I am because of the country I came from, my culture. And Khalwat dar anjuman means the following. There is a part of you that history can't touch, and history doesn't make or create. Your emotions don't make or create. Your culture don't make or create. Have access to that part. Have the emotions, understand your culture, and live through the cultural narratives, the things that are good, the narratives. At the same time, know that none of those things make you. Khalwat dar anjuman. And it's, to some extent, a devastating place to be. I mean, you can walk into a date wanting to build a brand new relationship. At the back of your mind, always know, I'm going to have food with her or him, but always know that they can't really complete me. I always know that no one can really complete me. So, politics. Life is all about politics.
That's a strong belief, because otherwise I can stop looking, huh?
Oh, you got no business looking. No, you gotta, again, go back to Pindar. You get into a relationship because you are old, and you're gonna get older, and you're gonna get sicker and uglier and smellier. You want someone to be next to you. You want him to sit next to the passenger seat so she or he can take you to Kaiser. Wait patiently until you come out of the doctor's office. There you go. Good job.
It's ruined the whole rest of my life. I need somebody to take me to the hospital.
There you go.
Yeah, that's about on par too. You know, you gotta laugh at the truth. You gotta laugh at it. That's right.
Yeah. I'll start looking for you. All right, you guys.
You and so many other people.
Have a nice day.